The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Don't be scared now, but it looks like you just wandered straight into U-Mind country. That's U-Mind, short for unaffiliated mind games, and you ain't never gonna be the same again. Brace yourself. It's time for a red-hot truth injection. Oh yeah! That's right, bitch. We're rounding up the sheeple and shaking them awake. U-Mind, too damn bad. We're gonna set fire to the wool over your eyes. Feel the burn, baby. Hot damn. We're toppling the lies of the lamestream media, one by one. Woo-wee! Watch them bad boys fall. Hey, Universe A, this is Universe B calling, and we're gonna tear you a new one. You mind?
Okay, hey everybody. I am here with Vista Council member Corinna Contreras. She is a council member who was voted in 2018, November 2018 to be exact, and sworn in December 11th of the same year. She has a very active social media presence and has been really integral in getting the word out about all the projects and all the really exciting things that are going on in Vista, sort of improving the community. And she's one of the people who is making this city a better place. Of course, if you don't know, we record out of Vista, so Vista is important to us. So one thing I've noticed on your social media is that you have a very strong commitment to building up Vista's community gardens and biodiversity.
I do, yes.
So you put a lot of effort into converting vacant lots into habitat for trees, for plants and wildlife. Can you talk a little bit about some of the projects you've been...
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, you know what, for a long time, what I've been hearing from the community is we want more access to spots that make us happy, right? Whether that be a community garden, whether that be some more parks. We have wonderful Bringle Terrace Park, which is a huge, beautiful park, but in some other parts of Vista, there's a lot more urban and not enough wildlife. And there's a lot of opportunity for us to increase biodiversity and get a little bit color in there, right? Mm-hmm. We can look at California native plants where we're not drawing a bunch of resources. We have, a little bit more drought tolerant. And so at this point, in the city of Vista, we don't have any community gardens that are done through the city. There are 2 community gardens right now, and both of them are done through different entities. And so that's been a big push for me personally, is to get a little bit more of what people are saying and what they want, that type of vision, into policy. And so at this point, we had our first discussion, and it was pretty fruitful. It was December of last year. I think it was December 10th, if I'm not mistaken, of last year. And it was the last council meeting of 2019. And so I brought up the concept of community gardens and biodiversity hotspots. One, because, it's not as simple to just say we want community gardens and bam, you get them. There has to be a little bit more working through the layers of bureaucracy, right? I mean, we are talking about government. But at the same time, there has to be a process where it's a sustainable thing, not something that, for the first few years, people get together, they're really excited, and then it kind of fizzles out. So how do you have a long-term project? So really, as a council member, being able to bring these ideas up so that the rest of my colleagues, we can have that public discussion, because that's where the discussion has to happen, is in public. And surprisingly, my colleagues, there's 5, right, on the council, so we all have 20% of the vote, and you need a majority to move anything forward, which is 3 out of 5. But I just wanted to bring this item up as a discussion, because I wanted to see, one, what other ideas and recommendations the public might have as pertains to community gardens or this concept of biodiversity hotspots. And then 2, just get a feeling for what my colleagues think about this idea. Well, we had some fantastic speakers come forward, and we had a pretty good discussion at the council level, and there was unanimous support for us moving forward with this concept. Right now, it's still not planned out, right? There's still the opportunity for the public to come and say, hey, this area right here, this seems like it would be better for a community garden versus this area looks a little bit more like it would be more conducive to have a biodiversity hotspot, some native plants in this area, right? And so my goal for 2020 is to bring this forward to the council again. But before that happens, really have a timeline as to this is when we're going to have more community input. This is the next time it's going to come to the council. This is when we're going to be voting on a decision. And so that's what 2020 is going to be focused on.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And for our listeners at home, would you explain exactly what a biodiversity hotspot is? I know you said about native plants, kind of bringing in native wildlife that would naturally nest in those areas. And
correct. Yeah. So, as you've probably seen, I don't know how long you've been in Vista, but there's been a lot of growth. There's a lot of urbanization happening, right? And that's true for so many of our cities, right? As we grow more dense, it means that little spots that weren't previously developed, they become a building or they become a parking lot. And so we start really missing out on what would be a more traditional ecological system. So looking at, where do you see even California poppies, right? And that's like our state flower.
Yeah.
And the concept of biodiversity hotspot, in particular, looking at California natives is, okay, what was there before the building was there? And what did Vista look like before it became urbanized? What kind of plants did we have? What were the needs of the plants? What were the type of pollinators that would frequent, X, Y, and Z plant? And are we seeing those pollinators still? Are we seeing those plants? And if we're not, which I think when you walk around Vista, you don't really see a ton of native plants.
Right.
When we don't see those plants, that means that we're probably not seeing those pollinators. So I'll give you an example. In where we're at here in our San Diego County, we have just an incredible amount of microclimates, so much diversity in our plant life and in the little critters, right? One of the bees that you would see that are native bees that you would most frequently see is this beautiful green metallic bee. It almost looks like it's out of this world.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the ones that is kind of like a common native bee. Well, how many times do you see that in a day?
Yeah. Because you plant the wrong plants, it doesn't know what to do with them and it goes somewhere else.
Correct. Right. Yeah. And so we have a ton of native bees that you just don't really see too often. But when you do get the chance to venture out in some areas that haven't been paved over and have that, buckwheat, all these different California native plants that are essential to bee health and pollinator health, you actually start to see these different types of bees. You don't just see the honeybee, which is not even native.
No, it's Africanized.
Yeah. It's so, it's how do we start to look at our city and quality of life, not just, how many sheriffs can we hire with all our money? Right. How many parcels of public land can we sell off? Like we have to start looking at a holistic vision, which includes ecological health and social health, right? These things are interlocked. I represent a district where it's a little bit more dense, it's more urbanized. We have smaller parks where there are parks, and we have a lot of vacant land that is just kind of a dirt lot.
Yeah.
And some of it's private, but some of it is public. So why don't we start with our public land and see, instead of having dirt or non indigenous plants, these invasive plants that also are a fire hazard.
True.
Why don't we start moving towards getting a more diverse California native palette there in color, in even the aromatic nature of some of these California wild plants, and then bringing the pollinators, because it only takes about 3 to 5 different species of plants within a small area to create a biodiversity hotspot. And then you start to see all these migrating birds, coming closer to the urban center, which is, I think, a cool thing in general.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things that people fight against is there's this sort of idea that we have a lot of chaparral, coastal sage scrub, things like that to a lot of people look like weeds. They look brown, they look dingy, and it's like you gotta teach people to see that beauty, because they want to see green lawns and rose gardens, and we don't live in England.
Exactly.
And so we have to modify to the environment that we live in.
That's a great point, right? And it's that traditional ecological knowledge that has been lost. And that's where I think the city of Vista and our surrounding cities here, especially in North County, could really build a bridge and have a more inclusive society, especially when we're looking at biodiversity. We can look at traditional ecological knowledge, right? Our indigenous people here that are still here, that are never given a seat at the table, never brought into these types of discussions, right? And this is actually could be a component of what's called our climate action plan. So all the cities around here, they have a climate action plan, and it's a way to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So why don't we start looking at these plans in a more holistic way? Again, always looking at a more holistic, regenerative way of living. Biodiversity hotspots should be a part of all these different climate action plans.
Yeah.
Sequestering carbon. How are we helping a little bit more on the rural periphery, but still in what's called the sphere of influence of Vista? So like Bonsall, out in the country. How are we helping our rural communities that are still in agriculture, and seeing as how San Diego County has the most small farms out of all the counties in the United States.
Yeah.
How are we helping them with their crop production via pollination, right? How are we addressing low honeybee counts and looking at, okay, so how do native bees pollinate these crops? And do they do it at a better rate? Are we planting around the periphery of farms kind of more annuals that are native flowers that come up for the pollinators? That kind of stuff, right? And so that's where municipal government, our county government, these different layers of government can actually work together and have this better view of what type of community we want to have. Right? We want to be able to bring in local agriculture here to downtown Vista, to our restaurants. And so what is that synergy, and what does the policy look like that allows us to implement biodiversity hotspots, that allows us to implement these different types of regenerative solutions for long-term well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you brought up before, it's integral, the ecological health of an area is important for the people who live in that area. I know that I've talked a lot about the fact that people complain that kids are sitting on their phones or playing video games, but it's some of them don't have any other opportunities if we don't provide parks, if we don't provide recreational areas. And one thing that I notice you guys have been doing that's really great is you're starting to, you had brought up Thibodeau and Brengle Terrace Parks. You're putting pickleball courts in there.
Yeah,
and movies in the park. And just creating that environment for people to get out there if they want to do that and interact with the environment and be outside. And I think that's really great. Is that kind of motivated by the same force, or?
I think so, because I think it's just the direction that people want to take their communities is different now, right? I think in general, people want to be a little bit more connected with their surrounding areas. They want to have a better idea of who their neighbors are, a better idea of, how to stay local and have a good time.
Yeah.
And not have to drive through crazy traffic, right? It's so variable. I mean, I wish I could go down to San Diego and have a good time over there, and visit and walk around, but it could take 45 minutes to get there, or it could take 2 hours to get there, right?
Yeah.
And so I think this is something that we're seeing, not just here in Vista, but again in North County in general, as people are starting to say, what can I do in my own backyard? How can I, as a single person, or I as a father, or I as a family unit, how can we just enjoy what's around us? And so part of that is municipalities are like, okay, how do we build that future that people want? And the Moonlight Amphitheater, that's one of, a huge attraction where you can go and you can see plays out in the open.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. They show movies there. And there's been a push to also start transforming our parks that have like that traditional landscape of a lawn and, maybe a few trees here and there, but not a lot of thought put into what kind of trees, what kind of vegetation are we using. But because we hit that water crisis, and we're not necessarily out of a water crisis, and we continue to see prolonged droughts and then really crazy rain events all of a sudden. And so there's been a push, and it's just been little by little, and it's culminated to now where we're starting to look at our landscapes differently. How does water run off of our landscape? How do we collect it? How do we slow it down? And at the same time, what kind of plants can we put here to keep the soil in place that aren't going to drink up a ton of water, that we're not going to have to do extra irrigation? And so you see all these different areas of focus just coming together. And what we see in the public is, hey, this park has some new plants in it, and it's more friendly. It has the pickleball courts now, so there's now this new group of people that are able to enjoy. And so it's like, how do we overlap? In permaculture, it's called stacking functions, right? So in one area, how do you get as many functions as possible? And it comes down to design and planning. And so I think holistically is the direction that a lot of people want to see their cities go, and the design and planning aspect at the city level is really taking that to heart. And I think we could do better, obviously. We could do better as far as the time frame, the implementation of it, bringing more people to the table to have these discussions, and just all around being more inclusive about how we move design forward, how we design our communities, instead of having development come and drive out community, right? And just kind of sterilize it with architecture that maybe is just a little dry and stale. Yeah. And so that's where the municipal level, this basic level of government, right, that affects us on a daily basis, that I had no idea how involved it was in my life until January 2017 when I started to investigate it. And so my whole thing is bringing what I learn and what I know at this point out into the public, and having the public come back into this building here, come to our council meetings, and let us know, what do you want to see in your community, right? Because I will be 100% honest with you. We, and this is a general statement for cities in general, but developers come to us with these beautiful blueprints, right? And they paint this picture of what they want to see. And the way the system is, they're the ones who get the most time. They don't have to just have 2-3 minutes at a council meeting, right? They get to come and show us these plans. But why is it that we can't have people do that too? Like, people can come and bring us plans. They can bring policy that in groups they've developed.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, that's the kind of future I want to see. I want to see a lot more community involvement in the way that we design our city now, because it takes 10, 15, 20 years for that vision to be implemented. So that means we have to be 10, 15, 20, 25 years, 30 years in the future thinking about what that future is going to be like, not just a reaction to the short term.
Yeah.
So.
And you mentioned bringing the public in. One of the things that I've seen you post about that I think is really great, I believe it's every Wednesday in District 1, there is a trash pickup that people can just show up for.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's one of the most exciting things because I get to have a different perspective every Wednesday, and that's the perspective of a pedestrian that I don't necessarily get for an hour plus time, right? Like, when I'm a pedestrian, because I have a vehicle.
Yeah.
When I am a pedestrian, it is for maybe 5 minutes at a time, right? So having this long vision of, okay, what's it like transversing District 1 for about an hour to 2 hours, getting to meet, neighbors that they've never seen me before. I've never seen them before. We get to have a conversation about what they see in the neighborhood. And at the end of the day, we have picked up as a group like 120 gallons of trash.
Nice.
But this wasn't even my idea. This came out of a town hall. So I have town halls every quarter. The next town hall is March 4th. Starts at 6:30 at the Linda Road Center. It's the gym in the VAPA campus. So kind of like facing North Santa Fe. If you're going south on North Santa Fe, it would be on the right-hand side. And so I had a town hall, and we were just having a discussion as a community, and these amazing women came forward. They're like, we want to pick up trash. We see way too much trash in our communities. We deserve to have a clean community. And I was like, yeah, totally. What are we going to do? What are we going to do about it? And right then and there, we're like, okay, let's meet up Wednesday at Luz Duran Park it was 8:30 at that time, at 8:30. And let's talk, and let's just go pick up trash.
Yeah. And
then it just became a thing. So every single Wednesday, my team captain, Jovita Serafin, who is amazing, she is always there, and I'm like 90% of the time there. Every so often I have a conflict with my schedule. But we start walking at 9 a.m. every single Wednesday. And prior to that, we discussed, okay, in this area, we've seen a little bit more trash. We got to make sure we hit that up today. And then we plan our route out. And then every so often, as we're walking, we might switch it up. But little by little, the word has been getting out, and we've been seeing more people participate. And recently, we've had our local Firefighters Association, the local 4107, join us. And that's been really cool. So it's just an experience that, I would have never have guessed a few years ago I would have been doing any of this.
Yeah.
And I'm so in love with picking up trash. It is the most, it's so therapeutic. It is so therapeutic. And then when we're done, we go about our day. We finish at around 11:30. We've done about 2-3 miles of walking. We split off, go on our own ways, live the rest of our lives. But we get to see the difference. And as we've been doing it weekly, there's less trash, right?
Yeah.
And there's more people that are like, hey, you know what? Oh, I really appreciate that you guys did this. Or even some people now start telling, my team captain and the other women involved, hey, you know what? We saw a lot of trash over here. Do you guys think you can come pick this up in this area? Right? And so little by little, I think that's how you break through apathy. Because for a long time, it's just like, this is just what our community looked like, right? It looked like a place where there's a lot of people that care, but didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so it just takes that point person. And I think that's really what people want to see in their elected officials now. Someone that really does represent them. And whether or not you agree 100% of the time, that's not a realistic thing. But someone that is going to be a point person for the community. And not just a solo leader type of person, right? But someone that believes in more decentralized leadership and teaching more people how to become leaders in the community.
Yeah.
And eventually then we can have even more opportunity for really diverse candidates to come forward, which is only better for people, because then we get to have more opportunity for, picking someone that really espouses our values.
Yeah. What item of trash do you encounter most
Cigarette
often?
butts.
Cigarette butts.
Oh my gosh. Cigarette butts it is the absolute worst. And then that's what gets, they're tiny, right?
Yeah.
And light. So as soon as it rains, those are the first little pieces of trash that go right into our storm drain.
That's not good.
So if I could just beg Vista right now, please, Vista, if you're going to smoke, don't toss your cigarette butts on the ground.
Yeah.
And they're so hard to pick up sometimes.
Aww.
Right? And so, that is the number one trash item. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but that's really exciting. So when is your next trash pickup? Is it going to be next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday. Yep. So people start gathering at around 8:30.
Okay.
And then we roll out by 9 a.m. We start walking.
Very cool. So I noticed that Vista has grown a lot as far as businesses in the past couple of years. We now have the Courtyard Marriott. We have 18 breweries, 3 distilleries, 2 wineries, a new grocery store. But in addition to that, we also have business walks and business parks that are downtown right by the movie theater. You have this beautiful lake where the ducks come.
Yeah. The creek walk type of area.
Yeah. Now, has that been something that you guys have been really focused on, is making sure that there's a balance between those two things?
As far as like business park, businesses and open space type of areas, I think so. Those types of designs were thought up a long time ago, prior to me being on council. However, I think it really just goes back to what we were talking about before, is this idea that people want a little bit different type of experience, whether that is going to a restaurant or living, going back to where you live or going to where you work, right? And so it has been designed to have that in mind. And a lot of that comes through the private side, right? So that's where a developer will bring forward a plan, and then it goes depending on what the zoning's like. And this is where it gets really wonky. So depending on what the zoning's like, and then it might go through planning commission, it might be, by right. But at some point, there's a checking of what that vision is. And if it comes before the political body, before the council, that's where you want your representative to be like, okay, you know what, this looks a little drab. We want it to look a little bit better, right? And so it just really depends on the project and how it has to navigate its way from plan to implementation. But I think what I've seen in so many different places is just the idea of not just having a straight industrial type of feeling, right, experience. It's a little bit more like, hey, where can we have a courtyard even for employees to go and have a lunch break? Which I think is, again, going back to that ecological health, well-being for us. I mean, we're just humans, right? We're complex creatures, but we haven't outgrown our biology and those needs that we have. And so when we're looking at well-being, it includes nature. Yeah. It includes, the sounds of birds, the shade of a tree, not just fluorescent light all the time, but like real sunshine that just makes you feel happy. And so I think for the last few years, especially, probably going back to like 10 years, there's been more of a push for that type of design. And it's up to us as a public to hold all these plans to even higher standard, right? And how do we start using more ecologically friendly materials in building and stuff like that? So starting to add more complexity to the way we think about public health and public well-being, and design is such a big part of that.
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar. I can't remember the name of the scientist who implemented it, but for a very long period of time when we would do addiction studies in psychology, there would be that, like, they'd have rats, and they would have one water bottle that's just plain water and one water bottle that had cocaine and water mixed. And the rats in this sterile empty cage with just 2 water bottles, and invariably would go over to the cocaine, and they'd be like, oh, well, addiction, they can't help themselves. And somebody came in, and I'll have to put the name in the credits because I can't remember it offhand, but he came in and he said, they don't have anything to entertain them. Rats are social. They don't like being alone. They like to play with things. They like to exercise. And so he built this little rat village where they had like little puff balls, and like they love to play with these little puff balls, just like cats or dogs or anything. They like toys. And they had their exercise wheels and all sorts of stuff like that. And they had the 2 water bottles. And he said that the rats they'd go to the cocaine or the heroin laced water every now and then, but they never did it to excess to the point where they got themselves sick or killed themselves, because they were entertained. They didn't need to constantly do that.
They had a dynamic environment.
Yes. And I think that's what you guys are creating, and what I'm so excited to see here in Vista is that we really are creating this dynamic environment that's so exciting to live in and so exciting to watch it blossom like it is.
Definitely. And one of the things that recently came before the council, I'm not sure if you're aware or if much of the public is aware, but we have the beautiful Avo downtown, right? But for most of the year, it is not being utilized. And so how do we have a more dynamic experience downtown? Well, we recently entered into an exclusive type of negotiation, maximum of 18 months, with a developer that's, considering what can the Avo become, right? How can we still, and my whole thing is like, we're not trying to blow it up and put something new. I want to keep that historical feel to it. But the programming inside, could we start to have something like the Belly Up?
Yeah.
Bringing all these different cool kind of music acts, stand-up comedy, whatever the case might be. That's also part of this ecosystem that we're talking about, right? Where's the entertainment? Where's the diversity in entertainment? Because not everybody's going to go to the Moonlight.
Right.
Not everybody's going to go up to a Belly Up tavern style type of thing. But when you start providing different types of areas to congregate socially, you start to inevitably get more people colliding with one another, right? And more exciting things that come from these different ideas and different types of people walking and brushing up amongst each other, having a beer downtown Vista, and you overhear someone else at the fire pit, and it's like, oh, hey, that's a really cool conversation. And so I think that's the type of experience that is only going to continue here in Vista. And we're trying to figure out, how to make this a fun place just to live, where you can work, you can have a good time, and you can go home, and rest, and have that not all spread out San Diego County, but something where you can, within, a 5 to 10 minute walk, lift ride, or whatever the case might be, you're there already.
Yeah. And also having all those the wineries, the craft breweries and stuff. We're supporting our San Diego farms by doing that. And I think that's...
And leveraging that type of agricultural history. here in Vista, we have the antique gas and steam engine
Oh, it's
museum.
a fantastic place. Yeah.
That place is awesome.
Yeah.
It is so cool. That happens to be in the district that I represent, right? And if I could see one thing in District 1, it would be for the community to just be so connected that everybody knows that we have this amazing asset, right? Yeah. And that more kids in my community get to drive a tractor for the first time. I think that's so cool. Yeah. They get to do blacksmithing, right? And you hit on something really important earlier. Maybe it's that people don't have the space to go and be out in nature and exercise, right? Some people just don't have that, especially when we become more high density. Yeah. Kids they don't have that acre and a half to play on by themselves, right? And so as a society, we have to make sure that we're providing these health access points for our youth, right? And I think that we have some assets here in our city that could be a little bit better connected and more inclusive of a wider population, a wider demographic. But it means people have to know about it. It means it has to be accessible, and it means that people have to use it. Yeah. Right. And so I think that's where it's not outside of the purview of the city to see how we can foster that type of growth, that type of well-being in our community. It might mean that we can't, do it all, but how can we partner up with these different organizations to leverage our resources here that the city has and whatever resources that organization has, so we can build something really cool for the community. And then we could see, hopefully decreases in delinquency at school. Yeah. Decreases in substance abuse, decreases in these different areas that, I think we all want to see progress in. Mm-hmm.
And then I'm really excited to see that you did vote in favor of the change of the Solutions for Change main campus expansion.
I did.
Yes.
I did.
Now that's a part of our community that sometimes gets ignored, is the home insecure or the homeless.
That is 100% correct. We have different organizations that are doing amazing work. But absent the city of Vista building its own shelter, we have to see who is doing that in our community. And the plan that came before us, Solutions for Change, they have a plan to do a campus expansion, to have more spots available for women and families that are on the brink, right? We need to, as a society, enrich those programs that are doing so much on a shoestring budget. But at the same time, it is the responsibility of the city to start doing things like this, right? Where we have real, again, holistic type of plans moving forward, because this is public money. And we have to be really careful about where we infuse public money, especially when it goes to nonprofits. So I am 100% in favor of the campus expansion, but I do just want to be 100% clear as well that I think the city could be doing a lot more on its own. Right. And that's true for a lot of the cities here in San Diego County and the county itself, because a lot of the funding that goes for behavioral health or homelessness, it goes through the county level and then it gets dispersed that way. But it has to be released. Right. Right. And so, we have another organization that does so much work here in the community, Operation Hope. How can we be a better partner to them as well? And how can both of these different organizations have the type of expansion that's necessary for this increase that we see year after year in housing insecurity of our neighbors? Here in Vista Unified School District, The district has identified about 1,300 students that are housing insecure, that are considered homeless.
Yeah.
That's a huge number, huge.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to do something, because it's just not right. And unfortunately, to be real, is when we have these discussions about homelessness, there's always a focus on the caricature of homelessness, right? That person that is chronically homeless, that has a shopping cart, right? And there's just the focus on that, and it takes all the energy out of the room. Mm-hmm. And we never get to talk about those 1,300 kids.
Nope.
So I challenge everybody to have a different look, a different perspective on homelessness. Because while chronic homelessness is an issue and it needs to be addressed, it is the tip of the iceberg. And if we're only ever focused on what we can see, and we don't focus on the giant portion that we don't see on a daily basis, that, we're never going to make progress. Mm-hmm. So that's where, again, it goes back to this creating a really robust and holistic environment of well-being in our city.
And I think what I like that you've created that sense of well-being by the council has put on a lot of different cultural events in Vista that reflects sort of our diversity as a community.
I want to give a lot of props to our arts commission for spearheading a lot of the traction that we have now in the arts community. And big shout out to Sarah Spinks, who is head of Backfence Society, which is an amazing little art clubhouse in the downtown. And so Vista, the city of Vista, could not do this without the amazing in-house talent that we have here in our own backyard. And it's great to see your local city government working with artists, and how that could be an opportunity to increase our economic activity as well, right? And financial well-being of artists, right? We can't just expect art to always be free. We can't expect murals to go up for free. Like, we really need to invest in our artists. Yeah. And that means, when it comes time for maybe there is a venue, right, at the AVO, how do we incorporate our local artists? Make sure that they always have a place to show us what they have up their sleeves, right? So, yeah, I think it's been a fantastic partnership that I think definitely will and needs to grow even more.
Yes. There's so many projects that you have, and it's hard to pinpoint just one. But I took care of my grandma for about a year and a half before she passed. And one of the things that just really troubled me was that there was no opportunities for her to get out and to do things. She had mobility issues. And there are so many senior out and about trips that are being organized by the city, and recreational opportunities. And I'd love if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. The Out and About program is phenomenal. And so for those who don't know, it is a program for our seniors where we go and pick them up and take them to different cultural events, take them to the senior center, take them to go get groceries. And, when we're looking at our senior community, mobility is the biggest thing, right? That is the biggest obstacle to social interaction, is people that are not mobile. They don't have the ability to transport themselves. Maybe they can't drive anymore for, a variety of reasons. And then what happens is isolation sinks in. Yeah. And then that is detrimental to your health. So I am so happy that the city of Vista has taken seriously this component of well-being, right? making sure that our seniors have the opportunities to interact with one another and interact intergenerationally as well. But having a means to get from one place to another. And whether it's also, taxi scripts. Sometimes the out and about bus can't take you everywhere, but maybe, we can help you get a reduced fare using a taxi. So one of the things that happened last year is we increased, it was under the title of Senior Nutrition Program, but it includes a lot of our senior services. And so the city of Vista was subsidizing that. But we were seeing, a few issues. I, in particular, love to go to the senior center because I usually get some good dancing in.
Oh, yeah.
It is so much fun. And one of the things I kept hearing over and over was just the quality of the food, the quality of the food. And I was like, okay, you guys, I hear you loud and clear. And so when this came before the council, we had a really dynamic discussion about, well, is it time to increase the amount that we provide to our seniors for food, for different activities? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. So we did increase the subsidy. I think it's $375,000 at this point that we help out with. And then we get grants through the county. And so, as our population continues to age, we're going to need to have an even better system to connect individuals to the activities that are going to be good for their well-being. So I can only hope that our Out and About program continues to grow with the needs of the community. And that's something that I will always fight for. But it is just amazing because I hear from everybody like, hey, we went over here. It was so cool. And, and that is the best thing for someone right now, like someone my age, right? I'm 31 going on 32. Knowing that in the future, if I make it there, right, to becoming a senior, I'm still going to have this amazing community. I won't be left behind. And I can only hope that, as a council, we will always be championing that quality of life for our seniors, because it is really important to a community that has a fixed income, that has mobility issues, that someone looks out for them.
Oh, yeah.
And that they have a return on their own investment of paying taxes for so many years.
Absolutely. Yeah. And seniors are so important because they represent the history of this.
That's our roots.
Yeah. And Vista is a city that's so rich in history. Even if you go to the Albertsons over by my apartment complex, they have pictures of, I think the first Vista City Parade, where they have the Vista Riders Club that came down, and just all these, and it's amazing to see how much it's developed over that time. And I love that you're helping the seniors, and you're also helping just to preserve the history of Vista. We talked about the AVO and the STEAM Museum. And then there's also the Guajome Adobe.
Yeah. I mean, in this little 18 square miles of a city, we have so much history here. And I really have to give it up to my predecessors, that they watched over and guarded these pieces of our deep history here in Vista. And I think moving forward, it's like, how do we continue to connect our community to our deep past and make sure that everybody has an understanding and an appreciation of that history? And so I think that's where we'll continue to probably see more groups that put on some really nifty functions, make those connections and really highlight that deep history. But I just think it's phenomenal. It really is. And it's part of our little portrait here of our rural area becoming more urban. Yeah. Right. And those layers that you see, it's something new next to something older and richer in history, and the way that they play off one another. And I think that's what really gives our downtown that unique characteristic, right? That you could go to Belching Beaver and the tavern, right? And be in like, even there they preserve the old bank vault, which is really cool. But across the street, you know, you have Yellow Deli. And then, I mean, it's just, it's phenomenal. It really is.
It is. And I think preservation is one of the things that I love about Vista, and kind of bringing it around full circle as we close out, talking about the Guajome Ranch House, the adobe. It is one of our historical sites, an 1850s adobe hacienda, but surrounding that is a whole bunch of untouched natural wetlands.
Yes.
And the city's been integral in making sure that that stays untouched and is preserved.
Wetlands are, first of all, I mean, with so much development that has happened here in California, we've lost a lot of our wetlands, a lot of our areas that are temporarily wetlands, right, known as vernal pools. I mean, there's an account, I can't even remember. I remember hearing it a long time ago on the radio, but they were talking about back before, you know, obviously all this urbanization, there's like thousands of vernal pools that were listed, and now we can count them on our hands, right? How many? And wetlands also sequester a ton of carbon.
Yeah.
So it's part of that rich diversity that we have, whether we're looking at diverse ecosystems, diverse demographics. Vista is a diverse area. It's a dynamic area, and the opportunities between you know, an urban interface and a wildland interface, and there's so much that we could do to make sure that we preserve this for future generations, but also highlight an educational component, right?
Sure.
Making sure that people know what kind of plants. Because I know earlier in this, when we were talking, you mentioned like a lot of people just don't know what these are when you walk by them. I was like that. I, you know, would walk by all this buckwheat and I was like, oh, whatever. It's like a weed. And then I start to learn about, you know, buckwheat can live to like 500 years or something like that. It's crazy. I'm like, man, this plant that I never paid attention to is like one of the capstone species for pollinators. It has this really long life, and it provides, you know, so much to our environment. It holds the soil and it keeps the soil from drying out. And I just never gave it the time of day. And now, knowing about that, when I walk around, I'm like, wow, that's a really cool buckwheat. The rust color with the white looks beautiful. And I think as we as people, if we could start learning again what is around us and reading the landscape and being able to know what the basic native plants around us are and who uses them and how they've been used traditionally, medicinally, we can really have a new profound connection to our land. And I think that's a part of our well-being that is missing right now. And that's something that, you know, I think the city could have a hand in helping out with that knowledge, making sure that we highlight and give a little, you know, placard to X and Y type of plant and just let people know.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a pleasure having you.
It was awesome.
And it's so exciting to hear about, you know, what's going on in our little city.
Yeah, there's a ton. 18 square miles of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, if you're in the San Diego area, check out Vista. It might not SeaWorld, it's not Legoland, but there's a lot to do here. It's pretty exciting. So, okay, thank you so much. Okay, and guys, all the links to the stuff we talked about is going to be down below in the description box, so make sure that you check all of that out. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.
Okay, so special thanks to Corinna Contreras, the Vista Councilwoman. You can find her on Twitter at RepresentVista. You can find her on Instagram at Represent Vista, and guess what else? You can find her on Facebook at /Represent Vista, facebook.com/Represent Vista. Yes! So check all that out, and check out cityofvista.com to find out all the goings-on in our fair city. We do broadcast out of Vista by way of the underworld. Special thanks to Savage C. Walnar, our legendary announcer. Thank you so much, Savage. And the You Mind theme, written by Ethan Mexel. It's called Demilitarized Zone, and doesn't it just make you want to dance? It should. It's pretty good. You can go to patreon.com/lucidnap if you want to support the show, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to. But if you'd rather make a small one-time donation, go to buymeacoffee.com/lucidnap. That's me. I'm Nap. Hi. You can also go to lostbreadcomic.com. You can buy my comic Lost Bread, you can buy art prints, and you can buy lots of other good things to support the show, or commission artwork of your very own. Got an idea? I can draw it for you. It's kind of what I do for a living. So you just go ahead, take advantage of that. And you know what else? You could follow us. I mean, it would be nice. And you can find all the links to all of our social media for all of our different accounts down below. And also, you should check out Creeping Wave Radio, which is our sister podcast. Creeping Wave Radio is available wherever you love to listen to your podcasts, and it is an audio drama, sort of a scripted podcast that takes place in the wild and wacky universe of Lost Bread Comics, the You Mind, and Creeping Wave. They're all joined under one umbrella of fun, and that umbrella of fun is available for you. You're welcome. And you know what? Thank you so much for listening and for watching if you're on YouTube. And thank you so much to The Grammarica Show, Nikki Benfield, and Neil, who are our Patreons, and we love them dearly. The You Mind is brought to you by Lucid Nap Productions in cooperation with a hairy old man. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Hello, is anybody out there? Anybody. This is Jim Cobb. If you are hearing this, the worst has happened. I've recorded a podcast at the end of the world and will broadcast it on channel PEN every Friday. It's all about the apocalypse, books, movies, TV, how much food and water will you need in your bunker, all that kind of stuff.
Excuse me, sir. You're gonna have to keep the noise down. You're in a library, and you're scaring the kids. The world hasn't ended yet.
Sorry, ma'am.
Shh. You're in the library at the end of the world with host Jim Cobb.
Fridays, exclusively on Project Entertainment Network.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.